Okay. So last time when we did this, there was a bit more emphasis on Tonglen. Tonglen is something that goes right through the whole text and is really important. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Right now we're going to do just a little bit more analytical reflection so that we can kind of bring the verses home. And then we're going to move on to the kind of more uplifting verses, which are really showing how, on one hand, the four opponent powers purify us, but now we're going to shift into the way remembering emptiness purifies us. And so they're going on to a lot of verses with emptiness that are really beautiful and profound, ways to see things so that we don't get trapped by illusion. So we'll just start with a nice settled connection with the breath. Yeah, and so just take a minute, come back to your motivation, enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and back to the breath. Watching without judging. Calm without sleep. Focused without stress. And so then very gently explore the split between how I want to be and how I actually am. The behaviors and values I cherish and my current ability to enact them. Just investigate the split scientifically, objectively, without shame or defensiveness. Explore the split between your understanding and enthusiasm for Dharma and the way that you actually practice it. And then what is underneath the split? In what you value as opposed to what you actually do. Of course, some of it is lack of familiarity, some of it is distraction. But down, 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 what causes the split is self-cherishing. So this is the demon, this is the butcher, this is the thief of our happiness. This is the source of our hypocrisy. This is the enemy, and it is not us. It's a habit of mind, born from ignorance, fed by ignorance, that sees this moment and this false illusory self as of primary importance. With indifference to others, at the expense of others, it narrows our focus to me and now, focused on the present in an unskillful way that seeks immediate gratification as opposed to long-term release. And so very personally, what are the words of your own self-cherishing thought? When it is dictating your decisions and motivating your choices, what excuses does it give you so that you don't practice Dharma, so that you don't live in alignment with your path? What does it say to help you be let off the hook? How do you give yourself permission to choose worldly motivations over Dharma motivations? What's the internal conversation? The way self-cherishing pulls you. And then imagine speaking to your own self-cherishing thought and saying, all I wanted was happiness, and all you gave me was suffering. All of these obstacles, all of this interference, every type of suffering and pain, this is what you gave me from your excessive self-obsession, from your indifference to others. Now I see through you. I've broken the spell and will keep breaking the spell. And in this way, develop into my fullest potential for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, you can relax your attention. All right, so again and again, the lesson is self-awareness is the key to all transformation. Self-awareness is the key to all transformation. Also cats. Shout out to all the cats walking by in people's various videos. No, but honestly, the things that pull us out of ourselves, that help us see how ridiculous the lies of self-cherishing are. Part of the reason why things like pets are so good at making us happy is that their absurdity and their presence shifts us out of self-absorption. Yeah? It's like, you know, you can be taking yourself way too seriously, and then your cat jumps on your head, and it's too absurd to take yourself that seriously. It's ridiculous. You can't. Yeah? So you laugh yourself out of it. So, you know, whether it's pets or it's children, you know, use the things that are around you to break the spell. Yeah, break the spell of your own self-absorption, because, you know, that's the sign that self-cherishing is driving, is when you get too serious, when you lose your sense of humor. That's a sign, really. Yeah, depression is a sign self-cherishing is driving. Losing your sense of humor is a sense self-cherishing is driving. Getting really irritable, getting really fragile. These are all just our little like wake up points to be able to point to and say, ha, there you are. I see you. Yeah. Do you know that time when you are talking to a friend about a difficulty and they can tease you and you laugh yourself out of your problem and you see your own absurdity? That's a good sign. That same friend and that same problem, if they tease you and you get even more tight and you get even more serious, that is a sign self-cherishing has really got stuck in, when you lose your ability to laugh at yourself. Yeah, so know that part of you that just gets so taking yourself so seriously, that self is not there. Yeah, that one that needs respect, that one that must be treasured, that one that gets either kind of volatile or fragile, that is the illusion, right? And that is the one that is causing all the trouble, which is why we must destroy him, okay? Destroying, all right. So the previous verses we did last session were the let's look at ourselves and go, uh-oh, right? Let's look at ourselves and say, ooh, I gotta cut that out. Now it's kind of helping us lift into, remember emptiness. Remember the relief of emptiness. Yeah, so you know, it's kind of like, it gives you some heavy, hard home truths for quite a few verses in a row that are a bit like, oh God, all right, yep, that's confronting but true, that's confronting but true, that's confronting but true. Now we lift into, and everything is empty. Remember that. It's a huge relief, and that's massive purification to get there. So if you want to jump to verse 92. So 92 says, O mighty destroyer of selfishness demons, with body of wisdom unchained from all bonds, Yamataka, come brandish your skull-headed bludgeon of egoless wisdom of voidness and bliss. Without any misgivings, now wield your fierce weapon and wrathfully swing it 3 times round your head. So earlier there was a verse about swinging the weapon 3 times. Now we're talking Now we're talking again about the weapon 3 times, slightly different meaning in this context. We're talking about the first, slaying ego grasping or self-grasping, the second, self-cherishing, and then the third, the body that has developed from those two. But what's important to look at here is that basically what you're invoking is yourself. The Yamantaka that you're calling to is actually your own wisdom fully realized. And your own wisdom isn't fully realized yet. But by kind of naming what is there and remembering its potentiality, you come closer to it. It's called ripening through rehearsal. Yeah, taking the result as the path. So this is the kind of tantric way of viewing things, which is picturing your future self and your fully actualized version and shifting your identity there brings it closer to the present. So Yamantaka has a skull-headed bludgeon, fun fact, right? So one of the things that he's holding in one of his many arms is a big club to beat enemies, the enemies being self-cherishing and self-grasping. So anyway, Yamantaka has many, many weapons that he's holding, all for different purposes, all related to the eye, and he is fierce as anything in order to intimidate negative states of mind. Right, so Yama, when we did the Wheel of Life, remember Yama looks very scary, the Lord of Death, fangs and snarling and really scary. Yamantaka, the slayer of the Lord of Death, is like 3 times as scary, but his completely loving, compassionate wisdom, intimidating negative states of mind, not intimidating the person, not intimidating in a harming way, but basically to scare delusions into submission. Does that make sense? So sometimes you need to navigate around negative states of mind. Sometimes you need to dispel them using antidotes. And sometimes you need to overpower them by dominating them. And it really depends on where you're at and what that day is like, which mechanism is going to work for you. But knowing as many tools as possible will help the right one kick in at the right moment. So just, I know not everybody practices highest yoga tantra, but I think if we're Tibetan Buddhist, it's good to know a little bit about the tantric context, just so it doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, mystical secret quality in a way that worries you, right? It can have the mystical secret quality in that there's a lot unknown and a lot to unpack there, but it shouldn't worry you. Yeah, it's all variations on a theme. It's just getting more and more extreme forms of the same ideas you already know about. Okay. Yeah, so before we continue on with emptiness verses, did you want to ask anything or add anything?
Yeah, I have a question. Honestly, I'm sorry that I don't have a camera because I can't seem to turn it on for some reason. I don't know why.
That's okay. Okay.
But would you say the antidote for self-cherishing is the wisdom realizing emptiness? Or are there any techniques to kind of naturally make it seem absurd?
The antidote to self-cherishing is bodhicitta. The antidote to self-grasping is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom realizing emptiness in the mind of an Arya Bodhisattva. Okay, so eventually we want bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness simultaneously, because that is going to really cut through all of the crap, right? But when we're in the introductory stages of trying to kind of break the spell of self-cherishing, you know, I think it's helpful on one hand to think about the harm it causes others, the harm it's caused yourself, to use your memory. But, you know, in another case, it can also be useful to just look at how illogical it is. Yeah, it's seeking happiness, but gives you suffering. Yeah?
Can I just ask a following question?
Sure.
So every day we wake up, we motivate ourselves in a bodhicitta kind of sentences, and you know, I lately have been struggling a lot with self-cherishing, I have to admit, and in the morning it's very hard to force bodhicitta over, oh no, another morning, and it has like this cognitive dissonance that is very, very hard for me. Like, I know I'm super fortunate, but how there's so many cognitive dissonances going on. currently.
Yeah, you're not alone. Hey, you're not alone. We all know the way, we all know the way we're supposed to think, and then there's the way we actually think. And so by recognizing the cognitive dissonance or recognizing the hypocrisy of your own mind, it's just to give you a reality check. It's not to make you feel deflated. It's like, okay, in a perfect world, this is the way I want to operate. How can I bring that in more often, just practically speaking? And a lot of us feel that way in the morning, even if there's no health problem. It's just we stayed up too late, or yesterday was stressful, or, we slept in a weird angle and we've got a stiff neck, or, the cat jumped on our face or whatever. Like, you don't always wake up in the best way. So what you do is to say, actually, do you know what? How I feel is not the main importance. I can recognize how I feel, I can acknowledge how I feel, I can bring compassion to how I feel, but feelings are coming from the past. They are not wisdom. Why don't I say the words of bodhicitta and let that revive my actual experience of bodhicitta in the way that it's not quite fully realized yet, of course, but whatever the bodhicitta is at my level, if I say the words of bodhicitta, it kind of helps me get over the present moment's aggravation. Yeah, and it wakes up your, kind of dormant bodhicitta, especially if you go to sleep with bodhicitta, right? So whatever you do before bed, do whatever you do before bed, but when your head's on the pillow, if you can just take a few seconds and think, for the benefit of all sentient beings. Yeah, become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's much easier to wake up and remember bodhicitta if you went to sleep with bodhicitta. And for you to have sleepy time that is virtuous, and dreams that are in alignment with your path, and ethics arise in the middle of dreams, and even interesting conclusions and connections happen. So, the night before is significant, and if you do Vajrasattva practice sometime in the evening, it very much helps you categorize and organize the day, and then let go of the mistakes that you've made, and to notice the patterns if you have repetitive mistakes. Vajrasattva is such a powerful practice, and it honestly only takes 15 minutes. Really, it's only 15 minutes. Just do it.
Like you would do the regular deity you practice and purify with that, and then Vajrasattva 15 minutes on top of that.
Well, it depends on what sadhanas we're talking about, in terms of technically what you're getting up to. Of course, all sadhanas have a place in them where they have purification. But, the special feature of Vajrasattva is that it prevents negative karma from multiplying, right? It kills the power of negative karma to expand by doing 21 of the mantras. Then if you have the 4 opponent powers in place, it completely kills the ability of negative karma to bear the fruit of suffering. You still need to realize emptiness down the track somewhere and get rid of your imprints, but you're not going to experience the suffering of those negativities that you've applied the 4 opponent powers to. So, adding Vajrasattva might seem like a chore, or it might seem hard, but it actually gives you tremendous relief so that you sleep better. Because a lot of the reasons we don't sleep well is things that eat us, right? All of the mistakes of the day eat us. All of the ways our mind got afflicted, they're in there even if we haven't really looked at them. So if you can do some purification before bed, and then do some rejoicing before bed. So you've done your purification, and then you go through, all right, body, speech, and mind. What actually went well? What is in alignment with my path? And end on an uplifted note that makes you want to do more of the same the next day. So you think, I got up, I fed the kids, I fed the cat, I watered the garden, I made things beautiful, I cleaned the kitchen. That was all positive stuff that was, nice for sentient beings. And then I did whatever work that I do, or interacted with whatever people I interacted with. And there were many potentials to be aggravated that I did not take up for once, right? Many times I could have been aggravated and would have been aggravated in the past, and I wasn't. hurrah, right? So rejoicing practice sounds cheesy, but don't forget it, because it also maximizes your merit, right? Anytime you rejoice, you're doubling your merit. It's amazing. So it's worth doing. You purify your negative karma, you do your rejoicing, and then, brush your teeth and, do whatever, yoga. I don't know what you guys get up to at night. I don't care. I don't want to know. But then when head hits the pillow, just do a quickie bodhicitta revival. Yeah, just may I become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Just quick thought in your head on pillow, just quick thought. Or just Om Mani Padme Hum, right? Really quick. But then you wake up and you might think, okay, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, please listen to me. And then you do your bodhicitta verse or whatever sort of is your main morning motivator. Yeah, and it's okay to do it while you're still in bed. If you're still in bed and don't feel like getting up and you're cold and, it's just like, no, do bodhicitta thoughts in your head on the pillow, because it'll help you get off the pillow, right? And then once you're off the pillow, you can do better practice, more practice. But, if first thing in the morning you don't want to get up yet, you can just have some cozy, quiet baby bodhicitta thoughts to get you out of bed, rather than feeling like you need to do this whole force yourself out and prostrate. And,
yeah, like at least not harming sentient beings type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can just wake up thinking, all right, yesterday my battle was with anger. Today may my practice be patience. Okay, in order to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, today my practice is patience. And then you get up and you go to the loo and you brush your teeth and then you sit down and do your practice. But it's good and useful to do a whole morning prep thing. There's just a few little seconds of thought while you're still cozy in bed and you're not doing kind of an aggressive move towards yourself. It can really help. So have a routine, though. That's the thing that really helps, is something that you try to always think in the morning, because then you think it even when you don't feel like it. And just by thinking those words, it kind of wakes up how much you love those words, because we love Dharma, right? We love the path. We just sometimes forget that we love it because, we're distracted and tired and whatever. So if you say the words that you love, you will remember the love you have of the path. Yeah. But yeah, gently, gently, gently. Routine is really powerful.
Yönten, can you please repeat the antidote to self-cherishing, all this thing a little bit slowly?
Sorry, yes.
It seems like a good thing to look at. That is why I'm asking.
So yes, note to self, I will make a chart. But the antidote to self-cherishing, bodhicitta, aka the mind of enlightenment, the spirit of enlightenment, the good heart, all of those are synonyms. Yeah, bodhicitta is the antidote to self-cherishing. Self-grasping ignorance, the antidote is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Yeah. And when you say which came first, self-grasping or self-cherishing, it's a little bit chicken or the egg, because we've had them both in our mental continuum from beginningless time. They act as master and slave. They act as best friends. They unfortunately collaborate to make us miserable. But as you start to practice, you might be decreasing one faster than you're decreasing the other. Yeah, in the case of someone in the foundational vehicle, you're decreasing self-grasping quicker than you're decreasing self-cherishing. For someone on the Mahayana path, you might be decreasing self-cherishing quicker than you're decreasing self-grasping, maybe. Yeah. Ideally, in your practice, you can try and work on both, which is why at the end of a meditation, we try to remember emptiness. So we start our meditation with bodhicitta, do whatever meditation it is, and then try to end remembering emptiness, and then also bodhicitta. So ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom realizing emptiness in the mind of a bodhisattva, someone who has bodhicitta.
I have a funny question. Is it possible to use bodhicitta motivation and still react with hatred, rage, aversion, because you say to yourself, I'm doing that to save, to free all sentient beings, or is it the wrong way to do it? And you should look for a different skillful way.
Yeah, there are two possibilities. One is that you're just lying to yourself, right? And you're behaving in an angry, wrathful way, pretending that you have bodhicitta, and it's just kind of a weapon of self-interest. So that's totally possible and can happen all the time, where we do something strongly and say, I'm being strong and assertive for the benefit of all sentient beings, but actually you're just angry. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that you show a strong aspect, but your mind is very calm and centered. So you can have a very calm and centered mind with a very strong display. And that is kind of moving into what we work on with Tantra, but it also can be from a sutra perspective. For some people, speaking sweetly to them will not subdue their negative states of mind. They need very direct, assertive words. For some people, you need to kind of meet them where they are before you can bring them down to center. For example, if someone is very wrapped up in a gossip round of something, they're gossiping about something and they're being very divisive, for example. If you immediately try to drag them out of their divisiveness into harmonious speech, it probably won't work. Right? If you try to suddenly make the conversation sophisticated and dharmic, it's probably not going to work. But if you meet them there without really meeting them there in your heart, but you kind of go to, yeah, right, those politics are so frustrating. So anyway, so you meet them where they are and then you try to bring them to a dharma path. It can look like you're being just as divisive as they are, when in fact you're just trying to go to where they're living right then and then take them somewhere else together. So intimidating negative states of mind in others is a very delicate process, but remember, an affliction is present if your mind is disturbed. Yeah, if your mind is not peaceful, a negative state of mind is present. So if you're able to speak strongly and directly, but there's not like an inner shaking, there's not, I don't know, even physically, your hands might start shaking or your cheeks might flush or something like that. If you're actually angry, then there's a physiological response, isn't there? And your thoughts might get very busy and buzzy and what should I say, what should I say? So an affliction is present, so don't speak from that place. But if your mind is quite calm, then you're speaking very strongly and forcefully with a compassionate motivation. It might be very skillful. Absolutely. And we need to do that. Yeah, sometimes we need to do that. Our teacher is notorious for sort of strong, direct, pointed comments that are completely filled with love. Like he can say right to your face, what you're saying is nonsense. And you just laugh and you go, yeah, it is. Right? If someone else said to you, what you're saying is nonsense, you'd be like, excuse me, how dare you, right? But he's so skillful and he has so much love that he can say very provocative things and you just laugh at yourself and go, that's totally true. Thank you for pointing that out. Also, thanks for pointing that out in front of everyone I know. That's a little embarrassing, but now I see the object of negation, right? Gumbo's laughing, he knows what I mean, right? Yeah. I think once he said to me, Yönten, this rubbish. You're thinking this rubbish. I was like, right, okay, so no. No then? Okay, thank you. But it's fantastic. Yeah.
And he has the most wonderful giggle afterwards.
Yeah. Absolutely. But he's not in any way laughing at you. And I think that's how you can tell that it's not anger, it's not criticism, it's not pride, it's not jealousy, because it lands as love. But you can just sort of check with your own motivation and ask yourself, am I speaking forcefully out of the need to dominate and win? Am I speaking forcefully because I actually seek to punish? Or am I speaking strongly because that is a skillful means to get them to hear me? And because I love them that much, I'm going to try a stronger method. Yeah. And I can be strong enough for them to disagree with me or to be, sort of thrown by that aspect, and I'm going to hold the space for whatever reaction comes. It's very delicate, but compassion doesn't have to be soft and sweet. And in fact, when it's soft and sweet, it might actually be attachment trying to navigate around conflict and avoid things that are hard. Yeah. But if you want to turn to verse 105, we get into some cool emptiness verses. So just try and listen to these in kind of a reflective meditation way, because they might really strike a chord. So I'll try to read a little bit more slowly these emptiness verses. 105 says, "O mind, understand that the topics discussed here are interdependent phenomena. For all things must rely on dependent arising to have an existence. They cannot stand alone. The process of change is alluring, like magic, for physical form is but mental appearance, as a torch whirling round seems a circle of flame." Yeah, y'all can picture that imagery, right? So if you had a stick with fire on it and you went really, really fast, it would look like there was a circle of fire, wouldn't it? It would look real, but you wouldn't believe it. Yeah. There is nothing substantial to anyone's life force. It crumbles apart like a water-soaked log. And there is nothing substantial to anyone's lifespan. It bursts in an instant like bubbles of foam. All things of this world are but fog-like appearance. When closely examined, they fade out of sight. Like mirages, these things are at a distance seem lovely, but when we come closer, they are not to be found. All things are like images found in a mirror, and yet we imagine they are real, very real. All things are like mist or like clouds on a mountain, and yet we imagine they are stable and firm. Our foe, our insistence on ego identities, truly our own, which we wish were secure, and our butcher, the selfish concern for ourselves. Like all things, these appear to be truly existent, though they never have been truly existent as all. Although they appear to be concrete and real, they have never been real, anytime, anywhere. They're not things we should burden with ultimate value, nor should we deny them their relative truth. As our grasping for egos and love for ourselves lack substantial foundations with true independence, how can they yield acts that exist by themselves? And then how can this cruel, vicious circle of suffering, the fruit of these actions, be real from its core? Although all things thus lack inherent existence, yet just as a face of the moon can be seen in a cup of clear water reflecting its image, the various aspects of cause and effect appear in this relative world as reflections. So please, in this world of appearances only, let's always be sure of what we do as a virtue and shun all those acts that would cause us great pain. So we're talking very much about the unity of the fact that cause and effect is not in opposition to the emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah? Positive actions lead to happiness. Negative actions lead to suffering. The law of cause and effect is true, and nothing is positive or negative from its own side in and of itself, right? And that is not a contradiction. But this is where we get lost, yeah, is that when we study the teachings, and if we get too invested in relative appearances, then we believe our own illusions. Yeah, we see the rainbow and think it's there. All the other analogies that are given, right? We see the difficult person and think that they're difficult from their own side, and that our anger response is completely necessary, natural, we have to have it, and everything is just as it appears. That's what happens if we forget the ultimate. But if we only remember the ultimate without remembering appearances, then we can negate the fact that harm was done. Yeah, we can say, oh, okay, your husband beats you, but it's empty of inherent existence. So it's not really harm if he beats you, right? So this is the thing, is we very naturally go to either side in isolation from the other side. And then we miss out on the profound wisdom of the Dharma. Yeah, or we become paralyzed and we can't act. So if whenever we're remembering relative truth, we remember ultimate truth. Whenever we remember ultimate truth, we remember relative truth. Very gradually, slowly but surely, we can bring them into one thought, one appearance as a Buddha. But it's only a Buddha that sees relative truth and ultimate truth simultaneously. So for us, we're alternating. Actually, for us, we're only in relative truth. But once we realize emptiness directly, we will see emptiness directly while in meditative equipoise on emptiness. But then afterwards, we won't. We'll just remember that things are empty, but they won't appear that way. Yeah, so we'll have to, practice not buying into appearances. Say, yes, it does look that way, and it's not that way in and of itself. Which is different than saying it's not that way at all, it doesn't exist. Yeah, and so that's the line that we need to tread. It appears that way, it is that way, but not from its own side, not in and of itself, not by its own nature. Yet still it appears. Yeah, so not negating appearances either. Delicate, so this one is really interesting. Then just continuing on, because these are interesting reflections and they're sort of poetic ways to get us into the right way of thinking. When our bodies are charred in a horrible nightmare by the world-ending flames of a stellar explosion, although this ordeal is not actually happening, we nevertheless feel great terror and scream. In similar fashion, unfortunate rebirths in hells or as ghosts are not actually real, yet we can fully experience their pain. Thus, fearing such sufferings as burning alive, we must cease all these actions that yield this result. When our minds are delirious, burning with fever, although there's no darkness, we feel we are plummeting further and further into a black pit, with walls pressing closer the deeper we fall. In similar fashion, although our dark ignorance lacks self-existence, we nevertheless must by all means break out of its strangling constriction by putting the three kinds of wisdom to use. So hearing, contemplating, and meditating. And then 112 is really lovely. When musicians are playing a beautiful melody, should we examine the sound they are making, we would see that it does not exist by itself. But when we're not making our formal analysis, still there's a beautiful tune to be heard, which is merely a label on notes and on players. That's why lovely music can lighten sad hearts. When we closely examine effects and their causes, we see that they both lack inherent existence. They can't stand alone, either whole or apart, yet there seem to exist independently rising and falling events, which in fact are conditioned by various forces, components, and parts. It is this very level on which we experience birth and our death and whatever life brings. So please, in this world of appearances only, let's always be sure to do what is of virtue and shun all those acts which would cause us great pain. When a vase has been filled by the dripping of water, the first drops themselves did not fill it alone, nor was it made full by the last several drops. It was filled by an interdependent collection of causes and forces that came all together, the water, the pourer, the vase, and such things. It's precisely the same when we come to experience pleasure and pain, the results of our past. Effects never come from the first causal actions, nor do they arise from the last several acts. Both pleasure and pain come from interdependent collections of forces and causes combined. So please, in this world of appearances only, let's always be sure what we do is a virtue and shun all those acts that would cause us great pain. So these repeating sentences, so please, in this world of appearances only, let's always be sure what we do is a virtue and shun all those acts which would cause us great pain. That's really the pith of our practice, isn't it? In the world of appearances only. Yeah. So just continuing on, because I think they all make sense, but it's nice to just kind of sit with each one and hear the different angle it brings to it. When not making formal dissections with logic, merely letting life's happenings flow freely on. Although we experience feelings of pleasure, in ultimate truth, this is appearance of happiness, lacks self-existence inherently real. And yet, on the everyday operative level, this seeming appearance has relative truth. To understand fully this deep, profound meaning for slow-minded persons, alas, will be hard. It's fine, we'll get there. And now, when we try to do close contemplation on voidness, how can we even have a feeling of conventional truth at that very same time? Yet what can there be that has true self-existence? And what can there be that lacks relative truth? How can anyone anywhere believe in such things? Yeah. So this is talking about in Arya's meditative equipoise on emptiness. When they're abiding in that meditative equipoise, only emptiness appears. That's all that appears. Yeah, and then they're out and about, living their life, not in meditation. Appearances arise, good, bad, pleasurable, unpleasurable, all these things arise and appear, but they don't believe it. They don't buy into it. But they also don't pretend that it's nothing. Yeah, so this is very delicate because, you know, there could be a conflict happening in a family or a conflict happening in an organization where something happened, right? Something happened that was against the laws of the land or was against the policies of the organization or was against the conventions of the family. Something happened, right? And if we are afraid of relative truths, we will say, nothing happened. It's empty. Nothing happened. You're believing illusions. No harm was done. Yeah, and that's the great mistake, and it's the classic spiritual bypass that a lot of Dharma practitioners do. Rather than say, it did happen, that happened. The way that it happened and the why that it happened and what we do with the fact that it happened is up for conversation. But we have to start with something happened. But something happened is completely a relative truth, right? Because how do we take in isolation something happened from everything else always happening? Yeah, we just sort of drew a border around one series of events, but there's a whole series happening that we could just as easily have drawn a border around and said, that's what happened. Yeah, so it's very delicate because this is what happens to us is that we cling to one or the other when we get rigid. When self-cherishing is driving, it says, live in one or the other intellectually. That will protect you from conflict and difficulty. And we always need to remember both. Just even intellectually, it protects the mind. Yeah, remembering both relative truth and ultimate truth. Remembering both ethics and emptiness is essential in any kind of moving through a difficult time, in using any kind of pleasurable time, and also not going to crazy town, right? You must remember both, yeah. And usually when Dharma students have arguments, it's because one of them is clinging to one or the other and negating the other side. And I'm reading them too, just because I think they're quite powerful on their own. So shall I just keep reading a few more emptiness ones? Yeah. Yay, emptiness. Okay, so verse 118. This one could be an analytical meditation for you to do on your own quite easily, just reading through it quite slowly and thinking about it. Just as objects of voidness are non-self-existent, the voidness of objects itself is the same. The shunning of vice and the practice of virtue are likewise devoid of all mental constructions that they're independent, self-contained acts. In fact, on the whole, they are lacking completely all mental projections and all preconceptions. Thus, if we can focus our clear concentration on voidness without our mind wandering astray, then truly we'll come to be wondrous beings with a deep understanding of the most profound void. By practicing this way, the two bodhicittas of the ultimate and the conventional truth, and thus by completing without interference collections of insight and merit as well, may all of us quickly attain full enlightenment, granting what we and all others have wished. So that's the last verse. So it's bringing it all together. Yeah. So Wheel of Sharp Weapons in a nutshell. It could be its own retreat, its own practice. There's a lot of flexibility with this text. But it's a nice one to just read very, very slowly, sit with one verse at a time. This commentary by Geshe Lhundrup Zopa, Peacock and the Poison Grove. If you had a book beside your bed that you were just really, really slowly reading, not reading to try and get through it, but just as one of the books you keep kind of coming back to in a quiet moment when you have space for it, would be a really good book for that. Yeah, it's a commentary on these texts. It's really lovely. So yeah, Orit, any question? Yeah, before we dedicate, does anyone have any last minute thoughts? Yeah, please.
I didn't understand the 118 verse.
Yeah, which part were you stuck on?
Just as objects of voidness are non-self-existent, the voidness of object itself is the same.
Form is empty, emptiness is form.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just another way of saying it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, good question. Any other questions? The wave is water, the water is the wave. For you artists out there, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we can dedicate together if you want to turn to verse 98. Verses 98 to 103 are the dedication verses or the aspirational verses. So it's a good way to end it with. So if you want to read it out loud, if it's not going to annoy anyone in your house. Okay. So thinking all of the positive actions we put into these hearing, contemplating, and meditating, may it go towards these aims. Verse 98. As crows may be cured after swallowing poison by a powerful antidote given in time, let's direct to all others our virtuous merit, that this may replenish their chances for freedom. May all sentient beings reach Buddhahood soon. Till the time when all motherly beings and I gain the perfect condition for us to be Buddhas, though the force of our actions may cause us to wander through various realms and the sex rebirth states, may we always be able to help one another, to keep our aim fixed on enlightenment's shore. Then for even the sake of but one sentient being, may we gladly take birth in the three lower states. With enlightening conduct that never grows weak, may we lead all the beings in miserable rebirths out of their sufferings and causes for pain. As soon as we've placed ourselves into their realm, may the guards of the hells come to see us as gurus. May the weapons of torture they hold turn to flowers. May all harm be stilled, peace and happiness grow. Then may even hell beings develop clairvoyance and take higher rebirths as men or as gods. By developing strongly the wish to be Buddhas, may they pay back our kindness through heeding the teachings and regard us as gurus with confident trust. Then may all sentient beings of the three higher rebirths perfect meditation in egolessness. In this way, may they realize the non-self existence of worldly involvement and freedom as well. May they place concentration on both of these equally, seeing their natures as equally void. And then just sealing it with verse 104. If we practice these methods, we shall soon overcome our true enemies, selfish concern and self-love. If we practice these methods, we shall overcome also false concepts of ego we hold to be real. Thus, by joint meditation on egolessness and on non-dual wisdom of voidness and bliss, how can anyone not gain the causes to weigh in a Buddha's physical body and its fruit, Buddhahood? Okay. Thanks, guys. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Venerable. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Beautiful to see your faces.
Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable.